Countless times throughout history, there have been moments of major disasters, tectonic shifts, and evisceration of swaths of people, economic chaos, and an overall constant devolving of humanity. This is, of course, all by design. A public mission to overtake the public, create a subservient slave class, i.e. you and I, and attain permanent dominance. We are witnessing in slow motion it happening right before our very eyes. Let's wake up to the truth. Well, you came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Today we are going to get into why this is the real global economic collapse. The evidence is piling up. I have a few examples to get into today. Let's look at this one right here out of Reuters. The outlook for the global economy next year is darkening, with the US recession and China becoming the first major emerging market to slash interest rates to zero. Both potential scenarios, that's according to Citi. Now, we've seen the IMF predict things like this. We've seen the World Bank make some threats. We've seen this all happen before. And yet, there has been no official recession that has occurred. Of course, we know this real situation, but I'd like to see them admit it. At least we know that it's a lot worse off than where they are pretending to admit. As the US economy enters its 7th year of expansion following the 2008-2009 crisis, the probability of recession will reach 65%, according to Citi's rate strategist wrote in the 2016 Outlook. So they use a lot of technical indicators to determine this. I do like some of the technical indicators, but I actually like the fundamentals, and not the fundamentals that we should be paying attention to, but of course the important stuff. We need to look at the real employment rates. We need to look at exactly what's happening in the real underlying economy, which I'll get to in a moment. What I would like to say is that the economists of the old school would say that every 7 years or so, there is some sort of recession. Well, we are clearly overdue for that, going with the mainstream type views. So even in their own view, we're overdue for one right now. So expect it to come, if not for the average reasons, then for all of the other indicators I've consistently talked about. The cumulative probability of US recession reaches 65% next year. That's part of their 2016 Outlook published late on Tuesday. Curve inversion will likely come more quickly than the consensus thinks. Of course, they could really delay this by engaging in QE4. It's very easy, in fact. They talk about the yields on the treasuries, on the bonds and everything, but I don't really like to get into that too much because it doesn't ultimately have much of an effect when we have these distortions that they've created in the market. Now, this is a huge piece of information that was definitely overlooked as part of the mainstream media. It should be on the front page, but they stick it in the back. Miami Herald: chicken for diapers. Bartering abounds in scarcity-stricken Venezuela. I've constantly talked about changes occurring in the monetary system where we could experience a drought, for lack of a better word, of the currency supply. If your currency doesn't buy anything, you have a whole bunch of money in the bank, you have stocks, you have all of this, paper type assets, but you need food, you need diapers, you need basic essentials for life. What are you going to do? Well, perhaps you have some gold or silver. You could start trading with that, or you have some cash under the mattress. But that cash under the mattress in some scenarios isn't going to do you much good, as you know. You've seen it happen before, where people buying things with wheelbarrows full and people using it as toilet paper, and you've seen it all before. So what we have is a situation where people don't have self-reliance. That's the message of this video. People don't have self-reliance. They're going to be engaging in this barter type scenario. They're going to be doing things that they're really not comfortable with, really not used to, definitely not prepared for. The administration blames the right-wing saboteurs for the economic malaise. Of course, isn't this always the case, how they point fingers, it's you, it's you, it's you? But of course, we know specifically that it's the system itself that's broken. Let's look at this from my book. As I discussed, the monetary system, many thousands of years ago, they had livestock. Then they were using crops. Then it became coins, later paper, and now digital currency. All of this seems to be going backwards as we enter a scenario where they have to use livestock in this one little scenario, where they have to go back to that. The monetary system is devolving in this case here. Now, it might be actually a better idea to use barter, but really, if we just eliminated the control that these so-called technocratic elite have over the monetary system, using paper, using coins, the theory of it all, it's a lot easier than having to keep cattle and all sorts of things in order to do trade to buy things. That's why we have coins. That's why we have paper and digital currency. It makes our lives easier. But of course, when you have all this turmoil, things are not easy at all. Let's look at China here. Apparently, they're going to cut their emissions of their major pollutants in the power sector by 60% by 2020. So their pollution here increasing dramatically. And they're suggesting that they're going to cut that by 60%. They're not going to slow down their growth by 60% or promise to, have something like this. They're going to cut it by 60%. If you do this, you're basically going to destroy the economy. This is exactly what they're trying to do right now in the US by cutting off coal. Yes, Obama said you can have a coal plant, but it's going to be impossible for you to run it because it's going to be so expensive. Now, I understand you want clean energy, but look at what happened with nuclear. Is that supposedly extremely clean? Look at Fukushima. China will also reduce its annual carbon dioxide emissions from coal-fired power generation by 180 million tons by 2020, according to the official statement, saying it's going to do so through efficiency gains. Now, however they want to do it doesn't matter. If you cut it by 60%, you're going to destroy the economy. How are you going to export that pollution to another country? How are you ever going to do this when all of the countries are collectively agreeing on these schemes? I don't see how they're going to do this without completely implementing an Agenda 21 type scenario. Now, this is some interesting news. Even in Brazil, a country that is no stranger to the crisis, the recent rapid-fire succession financial, economic, and political blows has been breathtaking. Look at what they have decided to do. This is out of Bloomberg. After a week in which the nation's top young financier was thrown in jail alongside a senator, pushing his bank into a struggle for survival, and Goldman Sachs Group warned the economy was slipping into a full-blown depression, impeachment proceedings were initiated against the president. Can you believe this? Look at everything that has been done with Hillary Clinton, with Obama, with all of the scandals we have seen previously in all the different administrations in the US, where they've made little small threats of impeachment, but of course that would never happen. This right here, they're considering the possibility that she has violated fiscal laws, and if guilty, impeached. Look at what's happening in Argentina. Look at what we have in the US, for example. Nothing's being done. It's a joke. They can do whatever they want in certain countries and get away with it. But in a country like Brazil, they're ready to topple the government. They're ready to do this right now by the actual people of the citizens here able to do this. Of course, they'll probably just put another puppet in place, but that doesn't matter. It sets the precedent that you can't get away with crimes. Even if this wasn't what happened in the situation, when you impeach a president, prime minister, what have you, you set the precedent that, look, if you do something bad, you're going to be kicked out. So at least on the surface level, it's good news. I don't know the details exactly of this, but I like to see the fact that we can shake up this system. The people certainly do have some shred left of power. If you found this video informative, please give me a thumbs up. Last but not least, if you found the video informative, I know you'll find my book, The Money GPS, even more informative. If you go over to Amazon, they have a look inside feature, allows you to flip through the pages of the book and see if you like it. Take care.